Thank you for joining us. My name is Karen Davis. I'm the Managing Director of OCIMF. The aim of this session is simple: to provide practical ideas that can help you manage stress and support others on board. Thank you, Deborah, Layde, and the Seafarers charity team for leading this effort. At OCIMF, we focus on maritime safety. Safety is not only about procedures, equipment, planning, and controls. It's about people. Safe operations depend on people who can think clearly, make good decisions, communicate openly in order to work well together. Seafarer well-being is not a side issue. It is central to safe and responsible operations. A seafarer myself, I sailed from cadet to master mariner, but I never faced the challenges that seafarers caught by crisis are encountering now. Mariners are facing a dynamic set of practical, human, and operational pressures that go well beyond routine seafaring challenges. Crews are navigating areas where the threat environment can change quickly, and sometimes with limited notice. This creates sustained uncertainty, requiring constant vigilance and adaptation. Stress levels are elevated, not only from operational demands, but from the awareness of potential threats and concern for personal safety. Over time, this can affect concentration, decision-making, and overall well-being. For the seafarers listening today, thank you for the work you do to support world trade and for the resilience you continue to show. Our hearts are with you. To those in leadership roles ashore and aboard ship, thank you for encouraging people to speak up without stigma or judgment. This is not intended to be another formal industry session. It's intended to offer practical support, something you can take away and use for yourself, or perhaps share to help someone else on board. Over the next 45 minutes, clinical psychologist Rachel Glynn-Williams from Seaways Psychology, Simon Grainge from ISWAN, and Chirag Bahri, fellow mariner, will share their experience and their expertise. I'll now hand over to Rachel, who will begin by taking us through some practical ways to understand and manage stress during uncertain times. Over to you, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Karen, and also Deborah, Layde to the Seafarers charity. I'm pleased to be with you all for this webinar. I'm Dr. Rachel Glynn-Williams. I'm a clinical psychologist working within the maritime industry. I've not been a seafarer myself, but my connection to the industry began about 28 years ago when I met and then married a deck officer. And I spent some time aboard with him in UK waters. He spent a lot of time over in the Persian Gulf on the ULCCs Stena Queen and Stena King, but the conditions are obviously quite different than for how they are now for you. In my work as a clinical psychologist in maritime, I support those who have gone through various trauma at sea, including those who have been held up in war-exposed areas and also in hostile detention. In my shoreside work, I meet people who have gone through difficult and traumatic events, who have found themselves in various situations under threat with limited control and choice. I've seen the impact that this kind of situation could have, and I would like to offer some ideas about what can protect you at the minute. What can help you to move on from this situation and back to normal everyday life again after this time of uncertainty? So this is what we'll cover. So we'll look at the ways that living in risk-exposed areas can affect people, what you can and can't control. We'll then look at some practical tools for managing ongoing stress. And then we'll move on to other things that work, particularly social connection and wider and further support where needed. We will hear from Simon Grainge from ISWAN and also from Chirag Bahri, who through his own piracy experiences and work with ISWAN can offer ideas and insights too. Deborah Layde, CEO of the Seafarers charity, will then remind us of the support available, and then we'll bring things to a close. Okay, and so, of course, working at sea does carry risks, and safety is always central. But this current time for you is just quite extraordinary. Here are some experiences and examples reflecting what seafarers around the Persian Gulf have been reporting. There are physical effects of the current situation. My head feels heavy. I've got a sore stomach, with heart racing. Emotionally, the quiet makes me feel anxious, just waiting for something to happen. I feel scared, I feel sad. I'm angry and bored. Thoughts and images of the worst happening, thinking about family all the time. What ifs? The what ifs can come quite frequently, and struggling to concentrate on anything. And actions as well, and frustrated actions. I just want to go, but I can't. Always checking the news. I've been less patient, more irritable with the team, and just low motivation. I can't be bothered. So we can see that ongoing stress can show itself in these different ways. And you may recognise some of these in yourself, and perhaps will have your own experiences to add as well. What we do know is that these reactions and responses and experiences are completely understandable and ordinary in this extraordinary situation, and that they come from the very familiar human stress response. So the human stress response is essential in immediate threat situations. If there's a piece of essential equipment sending out a loud alarm, or when you're ashore, if a barking dog suddenly comes rushing towards you, whatever that sudden stressful event is that we're talking about, immediately the brain picks up a threat, releases hormones, and prepares the body quickly to either deal directly with the threat, to fight it, or to get out of its way. That's flight mode. You might have heard of the fight-flight response. That's what we're talking about. And so you will be able to feel this automatic system switch on in your body. Increased heart rate, your attention gets sharper, muscles start to tense, and we're ready to act. We're ready to deal with the situation. And in most situations, all these responses settle down very soon after that threat has been dealt with, or it's been avoided. If you've discovered and dealt with the reason for the alarm, and you've got out of the way of this dog, things settle down. This human biological response is very helpful most of the time, and it helps us survive as a species on the planet. However, it is less helpful in situations that persist or repeat. As the system doesn't get the chance to switch off, your body stays alert. So in this current situation that you're finding yourselves, stress is ongoing, and you can't leave a situation, you can't act to change what's happening. And so your body and mind are more likely to stay on active and alert. And this stress response is still important to you. It does make sure that you are vigilant in this situation. But over time, as you'll know, the side effects are tiring. It's difficult to rest. It's difficult to sleep and to concentrate. And because there is less to do, you've got more time on your hands to think. And the human mind quite naturally tries to solve things and plan ahead. But this can lead to focusing on frustrations, on worries, on things that can go wrong. The what ifs are back, there we go, and just checking for information. And of course, none of this thinking and wondering makes a difference to the real situation. And in fact, it can keep the system active and add an extra layer of stress. So if you would allow me, here's just a quick demonstration of how our thinking affects the body. As you can see, this is a lemon. Now, I'd just like you to think about biting into that lemon. Just imagine what that would be like. And I wonder if you are noticing anything as you're imagining eating that lemon. Maybe a tingle, maybe some saliva getting produced, a sense of disgust, not really wanting to do this, maybe a screwed up face. And so what this might show us, if you've had a go at that, is that our bodies don't just respond to what is really happening around us. They also respond to what's happening in our minds. So when our minds are caught up with what ifs or overexposed to the news or imagined pictures, our bodies will go with it. And so we will feel heart rate increasing, breathing changes, our emotions shifting. And there's no really any helpful outcome from that apart from just more stress on top of what you've already got happening. So a useful shift here can be about focusing on what you can control, not what you can't. A lot of what's stressful right now sits outside your control. Overthinking doesn't work. And the more time the mind spends trying to solve problems it can't fix, the more activated the system becomes, and the greater the weight that you're carrying. So instead of trying to control situations outside of your control, we can look at how you can respond to it. And this is where this simple approach comes in. Focus, notice, and do. We'll have a look at each of these in turn now. So this first tool is about focusing on the here and now, finding the present tense, finding your own personal anchor in time. Shifting your attention from an imagined thing sometime in the future or going over something in the past, bringing your attention back to the here and now. So we can do that in a number of different ways. And these are just some ideas. Breathing, taking a breath, and just simply noticing that's what you're doing. It hasn't got to be a deep breath. It can just be a normal breath. Just bring your attention to it in this moment here, in the present tense. Some physical movement, yawning and stretching, for example. Even just small movements of the body can be helpful when your mind has got caught up elsewhere. Yawning and stretching can just awaken that focus again, and can be helpful when your mind is caught up elsewhere in time, and away from the things that might have snatched your attention away. Bringing your attention back to your body. Imagine, if you can, a sort of a spotlight sort of falling onto your hands or your feet, the back of your neck. Just bringing your attention to that part of you, and just notice, without changing it, what sensations are there. Your body is never anywhere else apart from the present tense, which makes it a really good personal anchor at any time if you want to bring your mind back from wherever it's wandered to. And noticing 5 things. Just look around you, listen around you, just name 5 things that are in your current environment. And so you may know some other ways, especially if you're somebody that meditates regularly. These are all ways of anchoring yourself back into the present tense. Okay. Oh, no, sorry, that one. Notice. So on this next tool, we're looking at noticing, just noticing what's there, noticing what's coming up inside you. Notice a thought as just a thought. I notice I am thinking about, what might be for dinner. I notice that my body feels a certain way. I notice that I am on my phone. I notice feelings of hope or sadness right now. So it's almost as if you are a sports commentator, just describing the action from a distance without getting caught up in whatever's what in the game, without getting caught up in whatever you're seeing or hearing, feeling. Because we know that when you can pause, it's more possible to stand from a slight distance from what's happening inside you. It can help you to down-regulate that stress response. So just like I notice I'm just eating an imaginary lemon, it stops that saliva coming into your mouth. It stops that physical reaction. And so the goal here is not to ignore the reality or importance of your concerns, but just to look at how helpful it is for you right now. And for those that you care about. Is it going to be helpful to go over those concerns which you have little or no control over? The key is to recognise that you've got a choice. You can choose to stay with that thought or a feeling if it's useful, pleasant and doesn't get in the way, or to step back from it. This can reduce that extra stress and can offer a sense of control. And this is do. You have focus, notice, and now do. So once you have found the present tense, noticed what's been turning up inside you, the next step is to do something that does work in this moment, that does make a difference. This often involves small, basic actions. For example, just simply deciding on purpose to put your phone down and steer yourself back into the task that you were doing without self-criticism. It's a very human thing in any circumstances to get swept away by thoughts and feelings and our phones, but just making the decision at this time to come back to what works, to what you can do in this moment. It is a bit like a bicep curl for the mind. The more often that you practice noticing where you are, deciding on purpose to come back and engage with something that's happening now, the stronger the protection you'll have from any extra stress that your mind can bring along for you. It's just choosing something in this immediate moment. So moving, carrying on with a task, exercising, doing something that's right here, right now, something to deliberately unhook you from that busy head traffic and to reconnect you with the present tense. So an action that is more workable and in your control. So here's that summary of this toolkit again. What we know is that when you focus and are anchored in this present tense, it becomes easier to notice what your body and mind have going on, turns off the automatic pilot. And you can decide if you want to stay with whatever turns up, and if it's pleasant, if it's working for you, then go with it. But otherwise, you can choose to step back. So these tools are just to offer you a little bit of extra insulation whilst this situation is continuing, to protect your well-being where you can. And so just continuing this idea now of doing what works rather than what doesn't. So beyond that immediate stress reduction, we know that these general strategies here can really support well-being, particularly during times of stress, uncertainty and crisis. And you'll already be aware of these things. This is not totally new stuff, but these things can get overlooked or not made enough of a priority when things are more difficult. We know at times of change and crisis that it is often the small things done regularly that can build resilience in individuals, communities, workplaces, families, and including on board. And these are the three key areas: being effective, connected, and looking after yourself, self-caring. So looking at effectiveness, first of all, we know that being effective, even in small tasks, can help people to manage changes, upheaval and frustration. A routine can help and carrying out normal duties, even though these are quite different at the moment, can really help maintain a sense of purpose, rhythm, and can make a difference to mental health. And it's still important as ever to speak up about your concerns and with any ideas. And even though as a leader on board, you may have limited options to change things at the moment, it is still very powerful to those around you to listen and be open. Psychological safety, as we call it, is still important and builds trust. And sharing and learning, if possible, for that sense of growth, that sense of contributing to the working environment. So are there any skills or experiences that you or other crew members could share? If there's some energy there and the opportunity to do so, we know that sharing skills and experiences can help build that sense of effectiveness, which can help support people through uncertain times. And so on now to being connected. Just spending time with one another, talk with one another, just being there, share space and downtime with those around you. See if you can agree to spend a little less time in your cabins and more together. Being kind and compassionate to one another. We know it's particularly important in situations which can't be escaped or directly dealt with. It helps to feel that you matter, that you feel less isolated, even when you just bring someone a drink, for example. These small actions can really make a difference. Being aware that there are some topics that are difficult to speak about right now, or difficult to listen to. It is important to step back from conversations that are likely to cause concern or friction to yourself or to others. And remain respectful. We know that bullying and harassment is never okay and can make a situation like this 10 times worse. Sometimes jokes can be unkind and extremely stressful, and a poor atmosphere brings risks for everyone on board. So watch your own behaviours, be prepared to speak up for others still, and about others if things turn out that way. And staying in touch with family. To manage your rest and to manage how things are for you on board, it can be useful to agree with family on topics of conversation that are helpful and those which are less so. And on to self-caring now. Here we go. So movement again, exercise, yoga, whatever it is that you would choose, try and make it more regular. Remember the stress hormones that I mentioned earlier? Well, deliberate exercise can help reduce the excess energy, frustration and agitation generated by those stress hormones. So exercise is always a good go-to. Try and get a balance of information, watch how much exposure you get to the news, and of course you'll know that not all of it is reliable. Some vessels have been having difficulty and delay getting stores. From the choice available to you, do try and eat and drink regularly wherever possible. Watch your caffeine levels, and because we know that can aggravate the experience of stress. And again, limiting the scroll time as well. Stepping away from your phone can really help down-regulate that stress. And be aware of your online activities too, such as gambling or trading. Make sure that they stay within your control and choice. Okay, and so now I have the pleasure of introducing to you Simon Grainge, CEO of ISWAN, who's going to talk more about the power of social connection.
Thank you, Rachel. So far we've been mostly talking about what you can do for yourself, which is of course really important. But I'm going to talk a little bit about what we can do for each other, which is equally important. So over recent years, ISWAN has been carrying out research on the importance of social interaction on board. And when I say social interaction, I mean how we build relationships, how we work together, and how we understand each other. Now, in that research, we've been monitoring the effects that simple social gatherings can have on seafarers, and the findings show just how important these things are. This is especially important because better connectivity can actually lead to greater isolation on board. Because if everybody stays in their cabins on the internet instead of being with their crewmates, that's not really very helpful. Now, the research was carried out on a wide range of vessels in different circumstances, but not in a conflict zone. But the findings are even more relevant in the situation in which you're in, because at times of crisis, we need to feel closer to each other rather than more distant. Now, in a former career, I was a police officer for 20 years, and I've led some teams into very difficult circumstances. And I can remember the importance of socializing as a team. It was a really excellent way of dealing with stress and how valuable it was. Because you live and work in the same space, it's particularly important that you get the opportunity to rest and reset with each other. And even just a few minutes spent talking and engaging with others over a meal or a drink can help you to switch off from everything and think about something different. Engaging in activities together brings you all together as a group, and it helps crew to get to know one another and build relationships. Through social activity, people start to recognize each other's strengths and weaknesses, and it means that people will come to know each other more and care for each other more. This is very important, particularly in helping to recognize the warning signs if somebody isn't being themselves. And it provides more opportunity for intervention to take place before a situation gets worse. Now, the research has shown that social interaction is important for mental health, and it encourages positive relationships between crew, which then helps to create a strong onboard safety culture. Separation of work and rest time on board is important. And whilst this is often difficult to achieve, every effort should be made to establish and maintain these boundaries. Leadership needs to support and provide permission for crew to participate in social activities. This is really important. So think about the kind of activities that might be possible. Watching movies together, playing cards or carom, table tennis, basketball, computer gaming, telling stories about your first voyage, and recognizing occasions such as birthdays and religious holidays. Of course, there needs to be respect for people's private time as well, but not if it means that people are becoming isolated. The project also recommended the appointment of a voluntary social ambassador on board every ship to help create social activities and get people involved. The ambassador is there to respond to the crew's preferences for recreation time and encourage a variety of activities to provide a healthy balance of mental and physical stimulation. They need to plan social events proactively, taking into account the different workloads and the circumstances, and where possible, advertise them in advance. Now, the social ambassador can be anybody on the crew, but if it's an officer, it makes it easier to make things happen. So all of this seems really obvious, but when we're dealing with heavy workloads, stress, danger, or worry, we forget to do these simple things, and we risk isolating ourselves without even realizing that we're doing it. And here's one final thought for you. In your job, you need to know that if something goes wrong, your crewmates will be there to help you. This doesn't happen automatically. It only happens if you have a strong bond with each other. If you know who they are, where they come from, who their family is, and what you have in common, then they won't hesitate to help you. And all this comes from time spent together socially and without work pressures. I know this from personal experience, and it's one of the most important lessons I ever learned. I've no doubt that you'll already be doing some of this, but please have a think about what you can do to ensure really good social interaction between you and your crewmates. What more you can do to build on those relationships. How well do you really know each other? Because underneath our professional exteriors, we all have the same worries and feelings. And if you're a leader, what more can you do to enable good social interaction? What can you do differently? How about appointing or being the social ambassador on board your vessel? Remember that the ISWAN team are there to help if we can. And a personal thanks to each and every seafarer for your dedicated service in these most challenging times. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you ever so much, Simon. And our thanks also to all those at ISWAN for this important work and the support you're providing. Yes, absolutely. It's so important to look out and look after one another. And I'd just like to go on now to think about the early support that we can offer, that you can offer each other on board if there are signs that someone's not faring too well. So the kind of things to look out for to indicate that a colleague might need some support. If there's some obvious distress there, if they're upset, if you find that they've been avoiding people or places, if they're less talkative, perhaps they've started to make mistakes in work, or they've dropped their usual habits. You'll know each other best. You'll know if there's some strange changes going on there. Do keep a lookout for those signs. And particularly amongst those who might be more vulnerable for whatever reason, if they're the only one of their gender, if they're the only one from particular parts of the world or speaking their language, it can be more tricky perhaps. And so just keep an extra eye out for people in those situations. But what to say? Starting a conversation with people is important, and it can be simple, as simple as asking how are you. That can work at times, but sometimes we're just likely to give someone, yep, fine, there's no problem. It can be more effective to ask someone about their day, what's been happening for them, what kind of day have you had so far, because sometimes people are more likely to want to talk about what's been happening for them rather than asking them to reveal what's wrong with them right now. Might be an easier start and lead to a more helpful discussion. And in terms of what to do, it's just about listening. You haven't got to be a counsellor, you haven't got to have any particular training. It's just about being human and listening with kindness and patience. Is there anything that you need right now? Anything that would make a difference? Perhaps a drink or a rest or something else? Include people in social time. Remember them when there's people getting together. And also mention the helplines and other support that's available, perhaps provided by your company. And also we'll have a look at the wider support from the charities as well in a short while. And if people are particularly struggling, they might need some more support. You could encourage them to speak to their head of department. Where they are in distress, perhaps it might be wise to have a talk with a leader yourself on board to bring some awareness to the situation. And what to do if struggles remain. So first of all, it's important to think about what normal adjustment is. For any of us humans, we know that we can take a while to adjust after a situation, and we can expect that after this situation resolves itself, it will be very expected to feel restless, to need some time to yourself, feeling sensitive to noise, perhaps feeling sensitive to the quiet as well. These changes and an adjustment can last for a few weeks. And so are not things to worry about in themselves. We do know that some difficulties can remain and or might appear after a delay for some people. And so what to do what to look out for if there might be continuing signs of difficulty there. If there are bad dreams or sudden unwanted images or thoughts come to mind, If anxiety is there that stops you from doing things and gets in the way, continued low mood, sadness, depression even, and if you find yourself on alert, if you stay jumpy and or on edge, if your behaviour becomes a difficulty for yourself, or perhaps for those around you, perhaps there's some aggression there, or if you find yourself leaning into alcohol or other substances, or you're cutting yourself off, these are all signs that more support is needed. And it's important at this point to be reaching out towards the welfare charities, helplines, towards your own company's medical and support systems. It's important to know, however, that even when difficulties do stay around for a while, psychological support for trauma-related conditions can be brief and effective. This isn't your life from here on in. Things can get better with the right type of support. And this message again, social bonds remain key. Relationships still matter. Finding ways to reconnect with your family, your friends, your community, your faith groups will all still help things move on, no matter what difficulties are there or otherwise. And it is important to mention the occasions for needing to act urgently. It is understandable that some people may be struggling right now. Please act urgently if you or someone else on board is showing up this way. If there are any signs of thinking or talking about self-harm, if you notice that anyone is taking unusual risks or expressing emotion in risky ways, perhaps getting aggressive, someone is appearing withdrawn or choosing to avoid situations. Perhaps someone is losing interest or expressing hopelessness. If this does apply to you or a colleague on board, please speak to someone as soon as possible, or to a colleague if that feels easier. And don't keep things to yourself. Support is needed, and there are a number of helplines to reach out to at any point of the night and day. There are people on board and ashore who are available and want to support you. Okay, and so here are the helplines that we'd like to just mention just now. ISWAN, of course, and the Sailors Society, Stella Maris, Befrienders Worldwide, Chirp. Just try and move that on. All of these organisations are there 24 hours a day in many different languages. Please do make use of them. They are there for you, and want to be able to respond to you, particularly at this time. And so right now I have the honour to bring into our discussion Chirag Bahri, who is the International Operations Manager for ISWAN, based in India. But we welcome him here now to share some of his own seafaring experiences with us. Hello there, Chirag.
Hi, thank you for having me, Rachel.
Oh, thank you ever so much for being here. And I guess I'd just like to start by inviting you to just tell us a little bit about what you do now and what your background is.
So I'm a former seafarer, and having joined merchant shipping in the year 2003, and since then I've been sailing across in the first initial of my 10 years. And after that, I have worked with the piracy program, and presently I'm working with ISWAN, the International Maritime Charity.
That's brilliant. Thank you ever so much. So wide range of seagoing and shoreside experience there, and obviously in the welfare sector as well. And I understand that you've got experience yourself of living under hostile conditions as a seafarer. I wonder if you would mind sharing a little bit about this with us.
Absolutely. Like, we were on a vessel in the year 2010, and it's going to be about 16 years of that incident. And but the experiences that we have gained are still quite relevant, which I would like to share here. the seafarers were on that vessel, which was hijacked by Somali pirates in the broad daylight. We were taken into in captivity for about 7 months and 20 days into an awful experience of brutal assault and torture on the seafarers during that entire episode. And the seafarers were there, along with their family members at home, had no clue about what to expect and how to deal with that situation of total uncertainty of coming out of that ordeal, or whether they're going to survive out of it or not. So that question mark remained of every minute, every day. That question used to arise in the morning, in the night when you used to sleep, that whether I'll be able to see the next sun or not. So that in that moment of living, which was we had a lot of stressful environment as well, and we went through a lot of difficult ordeal in that phase.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so, I mean, there's this idea of the uncertainty and, about very survival. There were sort of things that were always on the mind of yourself and your fellow crew. And I mean, they would sound like the most sort of difficult challenges that, a seafarer could imagine having. They sound really, really difficult. And would you say there was anything that you could feel would made a difference to how you and your fellow crew managed that time?
Yeah, so during the entire of this incident, as I mentioned, that we faced some of the most intense challenges a seafarers can actually endure.
Mm-hmm.
So the hardest part was the constant uncertainty, which I shared about. And that brought in the deep psychological stress. It compounded by constant threats and intimidation from armed pirates that you won't survive the next day. We will kill you. So living conditions were extremely harsh with limited food, poor hygiene, and lack of medical care, and making even more survival difficult, actually. So, and people were reacting very differently to the crisis situations, and as you have also presented in your presentation earlier today. And we realized all of these things after the hijacking incident was over. And we had no clue about how the people react to different crises. So I think your session today was extremely important for us to put in perspective that we all react differently in the different situations. And one of the greatest challenges was to upkeep our positive relationships between the various seafarers. As people, people were reacting extremely differently and we were extremely surprised the way some of the seafarers were reacting to that situations, which in fact put the other crew members also in a difficult situation. So yes, these were the emotional strains and that we all were going through. Equally, we were also worried about the family and the outside world, who were also, we had no contact at all with our families. But despite this, we all have to stay strong. And we just not have to look after our own health and well-being, but it's also important that we take care of the fellow seafarers. And this is what Simon's presentation about social interaction matters is important at all in the circumstances as well. So loss of personal freedom and control over everyday, life further added to our trauma. Despite this, we looked after the physical hardships was on one side, but the emotional and the psychological impact that it had, and the hope that in the face of prolonged fear and uncertainty, we were still able to survive out of it. And I just want to share that we tried to make a conscious effort to stay calm, avoid conflict, and maintain discipline and routine even in our captivity. Simple things which you have mentioned, like doing something to keep yourself busy, not in fact physically, but at least keep your mind busy. This is some of the very important stuff that you can at least look out for. These small actions gave us a sense of control and helped keep panic at bay. Because equally important was how we manage our behavior with the pirates. We have to be non-confrontational with them because we don't want to create a situation where we are again targeted. We used to, giving practical things like we used to sing Bollywood songs to make them happy. They used to ask us to sing a song of Bollywood star like Madhuri Dixit, one of the famous personalities out there. And we used to learn a bit of Somali. We had to adapt to that situation, what I was coming to into it. Like we have to understand that we have to adapt to that situation and we have to our reactions will also impact a lot if we are not going to adapt to it. So looking back, it was not any single action, but a combination of the teamwork, mental resilience, and hope that helped us through this incredibly difficult situation.
Mm-hmm. Wow, and there's so much that you've told us there, and it sounds like there's a recognition and an acceptance that there's some common ways of reacting to the same situation that you're in, but variation as well, and sort of making space for one another to have those your own individual take on things, staying calm but connected as well with each other. Keeping those relationships going, and even with the pirates themselves, finding some kind of connection there, carefully, obviously, and watching out for how things are going in that way. But yeah, and managing that sense of panic and keeping busy, keeping occupied. Wow, so there's a few really good ideas there. And so would you say that there's anything from that you've learned from those experiences and your subsequent work with ISWAN and the welfare sector that you'd like to share with those listening to our webinar today?
Yes, absolutely. I think from my experience of being in captivity and also having worked with a number of seafarers who have returned home along with their families, I think the key learning is that preparedness is absolutely critical. Training, awareness, clear protocols can make a significant difference in how situations can be actually handled.
Mm-hmm.
Another key takeaway was about how the seafarers are incredibly resilient. They have gone through the worst and still they have come out of it quite stronger. But we have to also remember that some of these seafarers may need longer term support as well. And we need to be mindful of that seafarers may not show signs immediately, but maybe in the future we'll have to try and be ready to provide support to such seafarers.
Mm-hmm.
Through my work with ISWAN, I've also learned about the post-incident support is just as important as the crisis, support. We always say that our work starts when the seafarer returns home. It's not that when the seafarers have returned home, we just let him free or let him or her free about that. Actually, the work starts there so that they get into proper reintegration into things.
Mm-hmm.
The further learning is about also the communication and trust. Seafarers need to feel that their companies and the wider industry are there to support them, not just during a crisis, but actually during the normal days as well. They need to build up that trust among their companies. And finally, we need to also share lessons across the maritime industry so that we can continuously improve the safety, response systems, and overall seafarers' welfare. I always, make and say that to my fellow seafarers that don't blame yourself. It's not your fault to be in any of the distressing situation that you are into. But please appreciate your achievements. Because of you, the world economy is still going. A lot of people are still fed every day because of your achievements. You need to be proud of that. And please remember that you all are together in this awful situation, and you all have to go home safely together. Thank you.
It's a wonderful message there to finish on, Chirag. Thank you ever so much for sharing really difficult memories, different experiences with us, and for your wisdom there from your lived experience, and allowing us to share that today. And so I guess just moving now towards the end of our webinar today. Here are just some more key messages following on from Chirag's. Stress reactions are understandable. This isn't if you are struggling at the minute, if you do notice changes in yourself, these are very human, very understandable given the circumstances that you're operating in. On board, just go with what you can influence and not with what you can't. It can be important to step back and just be able to tell the difference there between what you can and can't control. Support and welfare advice is available 24/7, and connecting with others does make a difference, as we've heard from Simon and we've heard from Chirag as well, and we know from research that people do connect with each other fare so much better when things are resolved. And the important message there from Chirag is that people can recover, and they can recover well, even after really extreme experiences of stress. Most people do recover well. And for any problems that do remain, brief specialist support can work. And so those are our sort of key messages to take home. And just as I wrap things up from my own point of view, I'd just like to invite you to consider one thing that you might try doing differently now. What could you do more of? Are there any things that you feel that you might overlook, that if you did more of them, that would be a helpful thing? Are there any things that you could step back from, anything you can do less of? And then perhaps as a crew, you could talk amongst each other and see what can you do differently to build those vital connections that will support you now and into the future. So right now, I'd like just to hand over to Deborah Layde, who is the CEO of the Seafarers charity and our host today. Thank you, Deborah.
Thank you, Rachel, so much. Thank you, Rachel and Chirag and Karen and Simon for your inputs to today's webinar. Chirag, your real life situation is, obviously parallel, potentially similar, quite similar experiences will be incredibly helpful for people, I'm sure. The Seafarers charity, of whom I'm Chief Executive, is pleased to have initiated and facilitated this webinar with OCIMF. Thank you very much. Working with Rachel, ISWAN and many others. And for everyone watching, I really hope that you found this session useful. I certainly have learned a lot as well. And of course, we're all aware on this webinar that some of you might be in a conflict zone right now, or an area where there are heightened tensions. And it's completely natural, I now understand, to feel under more pressure than usual, under greater stress and strain. And remember, it is healthy to find a way to deal with these feelings. And we really hope that this session has been really helpful to you to think of some of those and adopt some of those and practice them and keep revisiting them. Not just through practical advice that Rachel and others have shared, but also through understanding what services are available right now. So the ones that Rachel's already shared, and thank you, Rachel, for bringing them up again, right now to help seafarers like yourselves in crisis. And of course, we do encourage you to make use of the amazing help offered by organisations such as ISWAN, Sailor Society, Mission to Seafarers, Stella Maris, and many more. Few can understand the psychological pressures unique to life at sea, let alone the effect of being in an active conflict zone. But we all rely on seafarers, and we all recognise and think of you. And so to those seafarers dealing with uncertain terms right now, we say, know that you are seen, know that you are valued, and know that help is available. Thank you for all you do.